So it's letters day. So we have 7 new letters today from President Trump to a variety of trading partners. He's promising more either later this afternoon or coming tomorrow morning. A big one that he said this afternoon was going to drop soon is Brazil. So that's a major trading partner. But what we have so far are threats of 20 to 30% tariffs on a range of countries from Algeria to Moldova that would take effect on August 1st. And this is on top of 14 letters on Monday. So we're up to 21 letters total. The biggest nation so far today is the Philippines. That's Trump threatened a 20% rate there. And that's about the 30th biggest trading partner for the US. So these are kind of lower level trading partners at this point. The bottom line for markets is that investors seem to be looking through a lot of these, and largely because of the fact that nothing's changing this week. This is again an August 1st deadline, and there's growing skepticism here in Washington, and I would imagine on Wall Street as well, that what we're going to see on August 1st is actually going to be the rates dictated here. There's going to be a lot of talk to come between now and then.
Here's a question, Ben. As Trump fires off these letters, do we know how our trading partners are receiving these letters, my friend? What's the reaction? What's the response? I mean, I know, all right, there goes the letter. On the other side, does the trading partner think, all right, is this encouraging dialogue? Is it encouraging negotiation?
That is sort of the public response, as I would put it. There's a lot of response to this is let's keep talking. We're going to keep talking. There's a kind of always a new trade team coming through Washington. In recent weeks, there's no sense of that letting up in the coming weeks between now and August 1st. I'd say privately and even semi-publicly, there is a growing exasperation amongst our trading partners here about exactly what more can be negotiated here. There's some countries in particular that have talked a lot to President Trump. Some were even here at this past weekend. I'm thinking of Japan and South Korea in particular, but then got hit with big rates. I was talking to one of Biden's former top trade officials, and her note was, what else can these countries give? These are countries that negotiated trade deals in recent years. They have low tariffs already. They have low barriers already. Yet the first thing Trump did Monday morning was offer them a 25% rate. So there's going to be a lot more talking for certain, but I do think there's kind of growing exasperation. One last note on that I think will kind of increase this exasperation side here is a comment Trump made this afternoon. He was asked about his formula for these new rates. These rates closely track what he announced in April that was based on trade deficits. And his quote was, it was a formula, quote, based on common sense, deficits, based on how we've been treated over the years, and based on raw numbers. So the deficits piece is clearly the most important part of this. That's what the April rates were 100% based on. But I think it's going to be hard for these countries to figure out how they negotiate against what Trump considers to be common sense.
Amy, I want to get you in here as well. So as Ben knowing there, so Trump's firing off these letters, Amy. The markets seem to be kind of shrugging this off. I mean, I have green across my screen here.
You're absolutely right. And when we look at the VIX and we look at that kind of psychological sub 20 level, very low realized volatility, I think essentially what investors are pricing is definitely that look through. And also the idea that the taco trade is in full force. We're very, very different now from where we were in terms of paradigm during April 2nd. And I think this just becomes another hurdle where investors are like, look, been there, done that. We know what happens. They're going to be looking for tangible dates, which arguably continue to get pushed out. And if that is true, then it's very hard for volatility to hang its hat on anything.
Let me start with why the president focused so much on trade early on in the administration. And that is because for decades, we have had leaders in this country that have been willing to ship a lot of our industrial base abroad. And the president recognizes that you cannot be a leading global power if you do not manufacture domestically. So it is not just about jobs. It is also, which is important because manufacturing jobs are an incredibly important source of wealth creation and economic mobility for American workers. But also from a national security standpoint, we have to be able to make things here. And so that if there were any kind of geopolitical problem, we have industrial capacity to fill our needs. And so the president committed that we were going to finally address the trade imbalances that, as the secretary has said, have become the largest he has ever seen, to the point that if we do not get them fixed, it is the global economy was on an unsustainable path. So that has been the objective all along. And the president took bold action back in April on Liberation Day and gave nations around the world an opportunity to come and negotiate with us to address long-standing tariff and non-tariff barriers. So it's not just the tax that they apply to products and services that come in from the United States, but it's also the restrictions they put on business activities, what we call non-tariff barriers. And I think what you've seen is there are a set of countries who have come in and been serious about negotiations with the United States government, the U.S. Trade Representative, Commerce, and Treasury, and those are continuing to occur. You've then seen other countries that have not been as forthcoming or not as willing to address some of these longstanding issues for which the president is sending them letters. So I think it's not per se that he's frustrated with the process overall, but for countries who I think heretofore have not been serious about addressing some of these longstanding issues, the president has sent them letters notifying them of the outcome.
So it sounds like we could still see a combination of deals and letters.
That's right. There are still negotiations for those countries that are still engaging in good faith negotiations. There are still opportunities to strike deals.
The Federal Reserve is closely watching these trade negotiations and the impact that tariffs could have on inflation. So far this year, inflation has remained benign, and the Council of Economic Advisors is out with a brand new report that shows that there has been zero inflation so far from tariffs, and prices have actually dropped. We looked at PCE back in May, and we didn't see that. What would you say to the Fed about waiting to cut rates?
So what I would say, first of all, is that inflation is at the lowest level that it's been at in 4 years. And if you look at our interest rate environment compared to other places around the world, there seems to be cause for bringing interest rates down. Now, again, I want to be careful because, at Treasury, we stay in our more fiscal policy lane, and the Federal Reserve conducts monetary policy. But I think one is hard-pressed to look at the data and come to the conclusion that we are in an environment where inflation is a significant challenge to the economy. I think the economy would be much better served by reevaluating the current policy determination of where interest rates are currently at, given the fact that, as you said, we have strong evidence in the data that we are not seeing inflation. To the extent that we see it, it's primarily been in housing, and we know that housing inflation occurs with a lag. So I think that the economy would be well served by the Fed taking another look and identifying whether it truly is currently in the right spot on interest rates.
Well, speaking of the Federal Reserve, the president called again on Fed Chair Jay Powell to resign immediately during the cabinet meeting on Tuesday, and then turned to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and said, "I like you better." At the same time, we saw a report out this morning that the current chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, Kevin Hassett, looks to be one of the favorites as well, Bessent on the short list. Has the interview process started for the next Federal Reserve chair? And what can you tell us about who is most favored right now?
So what I would say is that the president talks to people all the time. So rather than saying that there's a formal interviewing process, just as he did when he was filling out his cabinet, which we have, the reason that this administration has been able to accomplish so much is because of the extraordinary talent that the president has selected to be part of his cabinet. And so he is constantly getting ideas from people. And as we saw, he cast a wide net. He talked to a lot of people, and he is going to, I presume, do the very same thing when he is picking the next Fed chair. He is going to cast a wide net. He's going to talk to a lot of people. And he is going to pick, I know, a fantastic new Fed chairman. Beyond that, I can't say that I've seen a short list or know who exactly is on that list. But based upon how well the president has selected people to serve in his second administration, I have no doubt that he will find us a fantastic next Fed chair.
And does the administration want Fed Chair Powell to step down from the Fed Board of Governors after his term is up as chairman in May of 2026?
It has traditionally been the case that when a Fed chairman term ends and they're no longer going to be chairman, that they don't stay on the Board of Governors. I presume, I would hope that Chairman Powell follows tradition along those lines.
The big beautiful bill, now law, signed on July 4th. How many jobs could we see created from this bill, and how much could it boost GDP?
Right. So the the law that the president signed last Friday is the core of the economic program for the administration. Critically important that we extend the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, as well as implement a number of new pro-growth tax initiatives. So no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, the immediate expensing of capital equipment purchases, the immediate expensing of factory construction, the R&D tax credits. All of these are going to be boosts to growth. But most importantly was making sure that we didn't have a $4.5 trillion tax increase go into effect in December, which is what would have happened had this legislation not been signed by the president. So the most important thing, and as a result of that, we are going to, as well as with the trade activity that we were discussing earlier, as well as the deregulatory agenda of the administration, we are creating an environment where capital around the world wants to come into the United States and be put to productive use. So we are going to see enormous job opportunities for the American people as a result of all of this investment that's going to be taking place because we are fixing and extending the tax system here in the United States. So there's enormous potential for there to be both significant increases in employment opportunities as well as job opportunities. Because again, when we're building construction jobs, when we're creating manufacturing jobs, when we are identifying new avenues of investment in the private economy, that is where productivity improvements come from. It is not from government, it comes from growth in the private sector. And so by unleashing capital in the private sector, by improving productivity, we are going to see the opportunity for enormous wage gains for the American people. This is not just theoretical. We saw it in the first term, right? If you go back to the results following enactment of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, you saw the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years. You saw wage gains for line and production workers exceeding those for supervisory workers. You saw the lowest poverty rates on record across all demographies. So by providing certainty, by providing permanence to those tax components that we put in place back in 2017, we are going to maintain and extend the economic record that served the American people so well in the first Trump term, and as the president said, unleash a golden age.
To your point on wage growth for blue-collar workers is the highest in 60 years. You pointed to we're going to have 100% expensing for factories, capital plant, and equipment, which will be permanent. So what kind of upward wage growth could we see, not just for blue-collar workers, but for Americans overall?
Right. So we have already seen that the first 5 months of this administration have seen the highest increase in real wages for the first 5 months of any presidency. And that's because there's already, in anticipation of this tax package coming together and recognizing the deregulation that's taking place, there has already been investment being made in additional workers and retaining talented Americans in the workforce. And so we are anticipating that we're going to continue that stretch of strong real wage growth. And so what I mean by that is wage increases well in excess of inflation. So as much as the Biden administration liked to talk about how much wages went up during their term, it's because inflation was so high and inflation overwhelmed the wage gain increases. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that every year, every month when people are getting paid, that their money is going farther than it did earlier. You know, we want to see that their purchasing power improves because inflation is low and wage growth is high. And those are exactly the conditions that are going to be created by full implementation of the president's economic agenda.
And really quick, Mr. Deputy Secretary, before I let you go, there were concerns within the Republican Party about driving up the deficit with this bill. I know that the administration has sent a rescissions package to the tune of $10 billion past the House, on the floor in the Senate next week. Can we see more spending cutting plans being sent from the administration?
Absolutely. So as a result of the work that we are doing to identify waste and abuse in the federal government, the One Big Beautiful Bill had $1.6 trillion in mandatory spending reductions. Now, you may know that when on the discretionary spending side, it's a different process. We can't do that through reconciliation, so we do it through a rescissions package. That first package sent up from the administration is awaiting Senate action. Provided that the Senate goes forward with that, there are more rescission packages that can potentially come because from day one, the president has charged every cabinet department and agency to identify places where we can be more effective with taxpayer dollars. And so, for instance, by finally completing the IRS modernization, it will just cost us less money to oversee implementation of the tax code. By improving our systems, by utilizing advanced technologies similar to what the American people realize in their private financial services, we can, at a fraction of the cost, engage in implementation and collection in the tax code with fewer workers. And that means that the request for money, the amount of money that it's going to cost us to operate the IRS, will go down. But the IRS is just one of many agencies where the president's efforts and the team that he has created have identified spending cuts. And so the way that we enact those is we go back to Congress with a rescissions package. There are more where the current rescissions package come from.
German automakers may be feeling the pressure from President Trump's auto tariffs. For more, we'll bring in now Yahoo Finance senior autos reporter, Praz Sumranian. Praz.
Yeah, so luxury brands like Mercedes and Porsche getting squeezed here, right, by the 25% sector tariffs on their cars. So we saw some results coming for Q2. Mercedes global sales down 9%, but U.S. sales down 12%. Porsche sales also down globally, but they're higher in the U.S., but there's a little caveat. They're basically saying that they have to rely upon pre-tariff inventory that they already brought in that help boost sales, as well as the fact that they ate some of the tariff costs with protecting pricing. So that's kind of a problem. And I spoke to Mercedes too. I asked them about what are you guys going to do for going the rest of the year. They said, quote, "We recognize the importance of consistency and transparency for our customers, committed to maintaining current model year 2025 pricing until further notice," meaning they're going to freeze prices for now. And for you, if you order a new car for a 2025 model new car, we continue to monitor the situation closely, are evaluating all options. We'll adjust to changing market conditions and the competitive landscape. So what they're saying is that they can't do this forever, right? They can't price protect forever. And it seems like model year 2026, we'll see some changes from pricing point of view. Look, they need a deal. They need a deal like the UK has with the US right now. 10% is what they have. That'd be great compared to 25, but it's not perfect either.
Who's in the worst spot, Praz? Porsche or Mercedes?
So with Mercedes, at least they have a factory in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where they make a lot of their SUVs and a lot of their EVs. Porsche makes everything in Germany, and I think another plant in Slovenia. That's it. They're known for German engineering and kind of European handling and things like that. So to make cars in, let's say, Indiana, it isn't really on brand. So they're kind of in a tight spot there. BMW, which hasn't released their full data yet, big plant in South Carolina where they build all their SUVs, where they actually ship them out to other parts of the world.
All right, Praz, thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.